All right, we are live today. Day 417. Yesterday, we were looking at this deal 1720 Brizendine Drive, Midfield, Alabama 35228. And we were thinking, hey, this property, we would have to buy it for like 20 grand or something like that in order for that to be a deal, quote unquote. Well, what if we looked at it from a different angle, right? Typically, you would look at a deal, hey, 25% down. What does that yield me on my cash on cash return? But obviously, one of the very popular strategies called BRRRR, which stands for buy, rehab, rent, refinance, and repeat. Now, obviously, for that to be accurate, we covered a little bit yesterday, is that you have to have accurate prediction of what your ARV looks like. And the less support you have, the riskier it is, right? Obviously, when you compare properties and you're trying to determine the after repair value, well, how does that work? How do you determine if it's accurate or not? And you just got to understand you're going to be making a judgment call, and you're going to have to understand, hey, what is the proof you're putting forward? Let's say you are challenging an appraisal. What are the comps that you're going to use in this area to support your analysis? Now, obviously, for the past couple of months, we've been noting down all these properties that have been coming on the market, all these properties that are sold in the market, 35228. And so let's go through this process, right? Now, look at the property from yesterday. Let's go ahead and plug it into our BRRRR calculator. Okay. Plug in your address, 5-bed, 2-bath. Didn't change the file names, so don't get confused. 2028. Asking price is $90,000. The rehab that we determined from our call yesterday was what? Rehab was $83,919. Someone put $84,000 just for keep it easy. $84,000. Okay. Let's say you buy this property for $90,000 still, as is for asking price. What is your ARV? Well, if you take a look at some of the properties there, so these are my 4 bedrooms, right? The only property that is 5 bedroom in here in 35228 that's like considered recent data is this property that just came and we added on 11-1, 411th Ave. This is a 5-bed, 3-bath, 2,600 square feet. Obviously a lot bigger, but you just don't see 5-bedroom properties that often. So if we're assuming that this dollar per square footage is going to be the same, well, this is going to be $67 a square foot, which would make this property worth 136 grand roughly after the rehab is done, assuming you get $67 a square foot for 2028, right? Now, let me see if I can understand what the condition of this property is. This property is, that's a decent kitchen. Flooring is okay. Maybe some older furniture. Maybe you got to refinish the flooring. So maybe you can make it worth a little bit more than 67, but not that much more, right? So this tells me a couple of things. Where is this property? This property is in between Westfield and Wilkes in 1720 Brizendine Drive is a little further because that property's over here. So you're going to cross a big highway to get to this property. Now, might someone object to you using the other 5-bedroom property as your comp because you had to go across this big Route 11 in order to get there? Yes, maybe, but then you also are hard-pressed to find another 5-bedroom property, right? So that is why I'm referring to this as art, not science, because of how little amount of 5 bedrooms there are, it makes it tougher to comp, right? And when it makes it tougher to comp, then now all of a sudden you're depending on the appraiser to make their judgment call on what they're using as comps, comparable sold property. But either way, you can run through those different scenarios and figure out like, hey, if I get $67 a square foot for this property based on this comp on 411th Ave, Midfield 35228, so same zip code still, well, what would that make the property worth? 135 grand. So on the buy, if I'm buying this property for 90 grand, I'm repairing for $84,000. I got about 5% for closing costs, another $9,400 for holding costs. I'm going to assume I'm going to borrow all this money at 10% interest rate in G18, and I'm borrowing all the capital from a private money lender. Well, after all your holding costs, assuming you're amortizing over 30 years, well, now you are needing a total of $188,000 total capital infusion on this property. Okay. We went through the rehab. So the rent would do $1,450 because that's what we found yesterday to be our rental assumption for a 5-bedroom home. After you refi, I'm assuming that I'm using 80%. So in C6, I'm using 0.8 times my ARV, my after repair value. So I can get back out a total loan amount of $108,000, which means if I spent $188,000, I'm leaving in the deal $79,000 as equity. But is that really equity when it's not even worth that much? That's a different conversation. Now, the problem with that is, here's the scenarios that you got to go through now. Okay. So these. So if I would pursue that route, and my property is only worth $67 per square foot based on this price, so you got to keep really close attention on this home and see what it sells for, right? I would be special balance source formatting. I'll be cash flowing 4%. Cash on cash return is about 4%. If I think my ARV is $136,000, and I bought this product for $90,000 with a $84,000 rehab. Okay. So what can I do to increase this to, let's say, at least a 10%, right? If I can say, well, what if I can go up to the size of this home? Because this is 1918 square feet, but it's a 4-bedroom, right? So it's slightly different, but almost similar square footage, built in 1961. This is renovated. So if I follow this comp in 916 Ann Street, there's some more photos on this one, but it's worth $71 a square foot. Boom, 71. Now this property is worth $144,000 roughly, right? So going through the whole process, I'm now leaving only $72,000 in this deal. And then you just copy that over, and now you can keep track of all the different scenarios. $144,000 is the ARV, purchase price is $90,000 with an $84,000 rehab. That still doesn't do it for me. Let's say I can get this property for a lot cheaper because it needs so much work, right? If you lower your purchase price to $30,000, which I believe was the scenario we looked at yesterday, we're like, hey, this might be a deal at $20,000. So you get this property for $20,000. Now it's a whole different ballgame, right? At $20,000, you will now get a perfect BRRRR because you actually make $3,720 on this, and now all of a sudden you have essentially infinity return in that deal. But let's say you're a little bit higher than that. Let's say you are at $30,000. Now you're only leaving $8,000 on the table, and now your cash and cash return is a lot higher, right? At 36%. So you played around with the ARV. You try to make it worth more by about $8,000, but it didn't do anything, right? So you have some room. You're like, hey, as long as I get between $67 to $871 a square foot, I mean, that's pretty conservative, but is that going to do it for me? No, not unless you get the property for a lot cheaper. And in this scenario, you're getting it for $30,000. When you're getting it for $30,000, you're only leaving in $70,200. Even though your ARV is still $144,000, your purchase price is now $30,000 and your rehab is $84,000. But now you're getting a 36% cash on cash return because you're only leaving in $7,200. Does that make sense? Hopefully it does. And this is the exercise I really want you to go through because no one ever really talks about all the different levers that you can pull. They would just be like, oh, you want to be all in 70% of your ARV. So if you think the ARV is $100,000, you have to buy your home and renovate it for less than $70,000 because of holding costs, etc. And that's how you register a perfect BRRRR, where you're able to essentially pull back out all the capital that you invested in the deal in a form of loan proceeds. So it's not taxable, but you're able to recycle it and apply it to another deal. It's not what we're doing here, right? This is a deal where you had to play around with numbers and figure out like, okay, well, how do I de-risk it? maybe ideally I had to be $20,000, because what if all of a sudden I discover some other things that happen in rehab takes longer than needed? Then you might say, hey, I'd be comfortable taking a chance on a deal at 20 grand so I can have enough cushion, right? Worst case scenario, my rehab goes on to 10 grand and I leave in still $7,200 because that's still heavy or good return on my capital. Obviously, this is not investment advice. I'm not soliciting any investments on the call. I'm not saying that this is the right way to comp. I'm just showing you all the art of comping and all the different approaches you can take. But more importantly, I wanted you all to see the different levers you can pull, right? From justifying to yourself, what dollar per square foot do you want to use for the ARV, the after repair value calculations? What purchase price are you willing to pay for the property based off that dollar per square foot? And then ultimately decide, hey, what is my return if I get all those numbers together from our rehab numbers, from our purchase price and my ARV estimates? What's my actual cash on cash return? Because that's what's going to help you stay objective to the deal and not just go deal and have deal fever where you're just trying to buy deals just to say you bought a deal. Don't be that person. Make sure you underwrite with maintenance and all that stuff, because man, don't be that person that underestimates your expenses and overestimates your profitability, because you're going to get burned really quick, really fast, and this will not be a wealth generator anymore. All right. So I hope this was helpful, everybody. I hope you all are able to use the same deal I analyzed today. If you guys want to copy the spreadsheet, DM me the word BRRRR, BRRRR, on Instagram or LinkedIn, and that's the fastest way for me to get you a copy of the spreadsheet. I didn't make the spreadsheet from scratch. I got it from a few other folks. I modified it so that I can capture the scenarios that I want. I tweaked it for my own experience, and that's it. All right. I hope you also put it on your own YouTube channel. Right? Put it on your own YouTube channel and decide whether or not this is something that you want to do going forward. Because when someone asks you, hey, why do you think this is a deal? You can tell them, hey, I think this is a deal because I've been looking at deals for the past 417 days. Might that give you guys some confidence? I certainly hope so. So that's how you went about looking at a BRRRR, right? If you guys have any questions, make sure you DM me. If you have any feedback, make sure you leave a comment, because I would love to address them and get better and better explaining this. Have a good one, everybody. Hope you all have an amazing day. Hope you all spend some quality time with your family and friends today, because that's what life is all about. Have a good one, everybody. See you tomorrow for day 418.